6.5%, was it? Is that what the current odds are of the Stanley Cup?
Well, and if you look at the round-by-round progression, the Stanley Cup favorite is the Vancouver Canucks.
Like, what a time to be alive!
Talking you through every goalie controversy, scoring slump, and draft lottery bust, this is the C4 Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com. Here they are, the best starting lineup we could afford under the salary cap. Chris, Matt, Anna, and Adam.
Welcome to another episode of the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast, brought to you by the Full Press Coverage Network and CanucksHockeyBlog.com. I am Chris at Lightforce, joined virtually as always by the wonderful Anna Forsyth at A403. How you doing this 1st of November evening, Anna?
I'm doing okay. A little tired, tired of, generally tired, but also just tired of hockey and tired of life.
Yeah, okay. I can speak to the generally tired on all reasons above, but is there another league that makes it difficult to be a fan of it any more than the NHL is? Like, I know every professional league has probably had its moment to really disappoint its fan base, but the NHL just seems to take these hold my beer moments, far too frequently.
Oh, I really don't know. I mean, it's a bad time right now. In the Premier League, you have oil states with terrible human rights records taking over clubs. In cricket, literally this morning, there's a club that has this, decades-long history of racism, including this long-awaited report on specific cases of racism, and they've decided no one did anything wrong. And, I mean, MLS is dealing with its own sexual assault reckonings. I don't know too much what's going on in the NBA or the NFL, but I imagine there's lots of bad stuff as well.
Yeah. That's the thing is, I'm not trying to discount any other league, obviously. It's just that every league seems to have its moments, but the NHL, it's just a different level. And then sometimes I actually think the NHL has the ability to be in that good position to turn a corner, to say, we're going to be better than this. Mm-hmm. And no, it's like, we were never actually like that. Oh, that was a mistake.
Yeah.
Nothing to see here.
A mistake.
That's the part that blows my mind.
Yeah.
Oh, but we will get into the week that has been for the NHL, and obviously that's been going on with Kyle Beach, as we now know. He had come out publicly, which took quite a bit of courage, and my hope is that by now personifying what is an issue. We've actually spoken to guests who have shared this as an issue, mm-hmm. who have been in there. Like you and I, when people say you've never played the game professionally or been in the dressing room, we have had guests who have been. And I think, the day of reckoning is near.
Right.
For
and it's sad that
it
took, that Kyle Beach actually had to identify himself in order to make that bigger impact, but it seems to be that way.
And to that point, I take, from the fact that he by doing so, he's had to do this, but you're right. It never should have even reached that point. We'll talk a little bit about what's going on in the world of the Vancouver Canucks, obviously being a Canucks podcast, and see if there is a light at the end of the proverbial tunnel here at home, because it's apparently not been yet established at the Raj. So let's dive right into that. Okay, so the Vancouver Canucks, having gone on the road to kick off the season, finally found themselves back at home. They had 3 games this past week, and I would suggest that 2 of those games, the Vancouver Canucks matched up quite well. The third one was more of I'm not entirely certain based on what we know. And the Vancouver Canucks decided to tell me they match up really well in the final 10 minutes of a game, when suddenly they've decided that being down a couple of goals is a problem.
Yeah. Although, to me, it just seems like they're trying, and eventually they break through in the last 10 minutes. But just the inability to score is troubling.
Yeah. Well, just sort of recapping the week quickly here. Minnesota Wild come to town. The Vancouver Canucks lose 3-2. The Philadelphia Flyers are in town. The Canucks lose 2-1. The Edmonton Oilers are in town. The Canucks lose 2-1. So you might say from those scores, what are you guys getting on about? They're not that bad.
Yeah, they're close in all these games.
I'm sorry, but having watched all three of these games, which is, again, something that I even admitted I wasn't necessarily able to do on the road trip because of times, I kind of wish I didn't. Like, it was boring, disinteresting. It wasn't like the Vancouver Canucks got up against a hot goaltender who, did everything in their power.
Yeah, because bear in mind that one of those goaltenders was Martin Jones.
But in each game, it just, if the Canucks found a way to make a mistake, they'd make it. Like, there was one moment, actually, the epitome of the entire sort of homestand at this point, against the Oilers, where the Vancouver Canucks defenseman, and I can't remember specifically who it was, decided it was a good idea to throw a blind backhand pass from the corner up the side, like the opposite sideboard in his own zone, which created a 3-on-2 giveaway with Draisaitl and McDavid on the ice.
Yeah, when it gets to the stage that your fundamentals are going wrong, you're having a bad time.
Oh, it was, and then during the intermission on Saturday, they were actually showcasing, like, look at how Calgary gets the puck out of the zone. It's all quick. And you watch it and all these examples, puck on the defenseman's stick, and it's like out of the zone, against the glass, up to the forward on the red line. Like, it's quick. Let's just get it out of here. The Vancouver Canucks are like, yeah, we're going to totally get it out of here quick. I don't know where it's going to go. And it's going to be awesome when it gets there.
Yeah.
Like, but I guess we knew this. Like, we knew defensively there were going to be struggles, but like, we were like, oh man, Canucks offense. They're going to generate more offense than we're accustomed to. They're going to score more goals than the other team. They're going to get like lights out goaltending from Demko and Halak, who, frankly, they got. Like, there weren't brutal goals or anything. Those goaltenders are the reason why the Canucks lost by 1 goal in each.
Yeah, I mean, Halak might look like he's struggling a bit more, but I think that's just because of Demko's so good. Like, Halak is having to like backstop a really brutal defense when the offense are giving him nothing. Like, they're scoring even less for Halak than they are for Demko. And
looking at like where the Canucks are giving up shots. Well, actually, looking at where they actually get their opportunities and where they're giving up opportunities, it's like a tale of, two worlds. The Vancouver Canucks, like, hey, the space in front of the goaltender,
yeah,
you do what you want there. We got the peripheral, but you take care of what's in the front. And then when they're taking their opportunities, they're like, let's see if we can, find some space around the edge. In fact, I think it was against Edmonton where their shot expectancy was higher essentially at the goal line in the corner. So, like, how many times did a Canuck throw the puck towards the net from that point in the ice and it counted as a shot because somehow it hit the goaltender instead of the back of the net?
That's when they're being charitable.
Yeah, like, it's
in
just
NHL
like,
HQ.
Oh my goodness. I mean, I understand, Chris, you're the one who said the Vancouver Canucks, have a tough October. October's October. We're in November now. Let's move forward. Let's move on.
Yeah. And
I don't know how to solve this problem.
I don't either. I mean, I think we did very briefly touch on it in Iota, but whether this is a coaching problem or it's a personnel problem, and I do think it's both, because the special teams aren't performing at all, and the power play has been super stagnant, especially. They've changed it up a little since in the last couple of games. It's, if anything, it's got worse. It's just they're not getting looks at all. And you kind of think the power play one, like that first unit, yes, it needs to be structured, as opposed to power play 2, which is just kamikaze, go for the net, whatever. But just everyone's stuck in their positions and not moving, and it's just brutal to watch.
Well, there are those that would actually, to your point, suggest that the power play one revolves around PD. PD doesn't have his game right now. And they're not wrong. It's just how apparent is it that the Vancouver Canucks are requiring that PD needs to perform for them to stand a chance? And where he isn't, they then require a goaltender to stand on his or her head and the opposition goaltender to, Carter Hart the game for him, right? Like it's surreal. And as much as this is still the C4 Canucks playoffs podcast, because I can't imagine any other scenario. This ain't the team that's going to get them there.
No, I mean, the team is built very similarly to the 1920 Canucks, where you just everything had to go right for them to make the playoffs, including the season stopping when all their players were injured and then making it in on points percentage. But that, I mean, elite goaltending, which they pretty much have. At least they're very close. And then their stars performing, which Quinn Hughes is and PD really isn't. And let's be real, like, it's not a disaster. But when you depend so much on star power and it's not coming together, that's when it looks like the Canucks have looked.
Well, watching those 3 games, the fact that the Edmonton Oilers seem to be putting more pressure on Bo Horvat, I think is indicative of what the opposition is currently thinking is the way to shut down the Vancouver Canucks.
Which it turns out they're right? Bo is our only hope.
And he is, we're seeing glimpses of what we would call playoff Bo, but that's not who the Vancouver Canucks need to be relying on to get them the offense that is necessary for them to eke out wins. I'm equally confused how this team was able to do what it did on the road and somehow can't figure out how to do it at home, especially when they've now got a full barn. And in the first game, a metric ton of Larsheider's up there acting all crazy and stuff. And
we were loud, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Got quite a few chants going, including a Tyler Myers one. But yeah, there was lots of comments on Twitter from the media saying how loud it was on Tuesday, which, I think that was everyone, obviously, but it was great to be back and be part of that. I will say that, even though the game was
rough. Actually, on sort of the fan sort of experience atmosphere, as I want to, touch on that. I kind of wonder if, it's great that the Larsheider's first sort of night was home opener, but I kind of wonder if Larsheider's was, let's say, game 2. If you could draw a correlation between we got all this pent-up energy game 1, which was probably going to happen, Larsheider's or not, to what we sort of experience within sort of night number 2. I think there's additional energy in the building, especially considering where the Canucks have been. It'll be interesting if they continue to play this way, if that energy will continue to exist. But talk about that first game. How electric was it?
I mean, it was weird and good, if that makes sense. Typical Vancouver night, pouring with rain outside, as many have remarked on Twitter and elsewhere. They weren't doing a visual check of vaccination, which would not be at all strange if you were going to a bar or a restaurant. But it is a bit strange in a huge arena, especially when people have remarked and said they would prefer if it was scanned. But there we go.
Well, the requirement is a visual check.
They were as thorough as possible given that, but it was just a visual check. Yeah, everyone's masked, walking around, but as soon as you're stood there having a beer or hot dog, that's not the case anymore. Yeah, obviously it's a bit weird, but kind of what I expected. About a third to half people are masked all the time in the arena. But yeah, obviously that does change. But yeah, it was a very cool atmosphere. Like, I think they did a good job with like the land acknowledgement and yeah, the Indigenous celebration, the Marvel video.
Wasn't Marvel.
Okay,
Because
but
they didn't pay the money to secure the rights.
Well, I was saying, how much money did Marvel pay them? They should have paid them money. Anyway,
yeah.
It was good. It was really cool. There was some weird elements to it, like the random child that's in it. I thought was Quinn Hughes at the start, but it's not. It was just a random child.
That wasn't Quinn Hughes in Apocalyptic Rogers Arena, part of downtown Vancouver. Like,
yeah. Also, strange choice to go for an apocalypse when you're still mid-pandemic, but all right. There was some very cool elements to it, I will say.
And it wasn't just Marvel. Like, there was the nod to Star Wars, where you had Petey on some planet with a few moons and what appears to be a lightsaber-ish style stick and a training puck, which is akin to the training droid from Star Wars. Like, I could probably go through all my, nerddom here and say, here's what this was calling to, blah, 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 blah. I liked the video.
Bo have been the Jedi, Bo-Wan Kenobi, our only hope right now.
And that's the end of this show. We'll catch you again next week. Anna may or may not be here. Don't know.
Well.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, but it was cool. And it was loud and it was fun. It wasn't all positive. A cop got up in our business,
Oh, really?
Cop thing of power tripping.
Well, no. Okay. Like, why did they, the officer come to your space? Generally, in my experience, and it's been a while since I've been in the barn, they don't show up until such time as security isn't able to handle it anymore. So,
oh no, they missed out security. Security were not involved. They just skipped that option. Basically, Canucks. While I really appreciate the deal they cut us, as a group, I also feel like we're giving something back in the atmosphere. And they could do better with accommodating that. Maybe by not including on Larsheider's nights a creepy guy with fingerless gloves and his drum that just doesn't work at all with us.
So like they had sold a seat in the section?
No. I just mean Crazy Pete's there, which is
okay.
A terrible idea anyway, but he definitely shouldn't be there on Larsheider's nights because it's like trying to add a competing atmosphere creator.
Crazy Pete doesn't like competition, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely true.
I've been at many events in my many years that he has been at in Vancouver, and he does not like competition.
Yeah. So there's that. But I think there was a couple that were accidentally sold seats in our section. They joined in for the first part, and then I think they got moved. But that was no big deal. But yeah, there was a host who wasn't aware of what was going on and decided to single out one guy and call him out for standing. So we stand the whole game. The whole section was standing. Hundreds,
that's one of the Larsheider's rules.
Yeah, we're literally the whole section behind him is standing. She decides to pick on this one guy. He has admitted in hindsight he maybe gave it back a bit, but she went straight to I'm calling the cop over.
Sweet.
So, yeah. But yeah, we did not take too well to that. It was sorted in the end. It was fine. But yeah, just the cop where you don't need... why do you need cops at all, I would say, in Rogers Arena?
Well, that's why I was curious, because generally, again, my experience, the VPD are present. But when they get involved, it in my experience, again, tends to be well after the fact. They would have probably gotten more involved out on the street.
Right.
They're more we'll throw the irons on whomever it is and off they go with us. That's really the only time I've seen an intervention with it. Like Canucks, Lions, Whitecaps, what have you. Security and whomever it is that they have on site deals with the majority of it. It's just the uniform presence to intimidate.
Right. So yeah, it wasn't necessary, but it was sorted in the end.
Well, that's unfortunate, but I'll admit there are times that I wonder if like one part of the Canucks organization doesn't really communicate well to the other.
Oh yeah.
And how is this still a thing? Like that's the part that blows my mind is that, it's not like the Larshiders are new. I guess you could say, well, maybe the people that were there pre-pandemic are no longer there today, which
definitely
is
true.
Fair. But like,
and I know that they are still outsourcing a lot of work within the organization, which I get from one perspective, but I think long term, isn't that just more expensive?
Well, yeah.
But
in the short term, it fills a need.
Yeah.
Right. It's very effective from a short term perspective, but when you think about like customer experience, long term, it never works out.
Wait,
like if you're
prioritize short term over long term. Weird.
It's day to day. We're just looking at this day to day. I'm actually curious because I wasn't in the building. I will be there in November when the Chicago Blackhawks come to town of all teams. The thing I noticed about sort of what Seattle did sort of on the ice with projections, obviously we've seen sort of Vegas do some crazy stuff. Vancouver has had the potential. Like we've seen the Aquilinis put some cash into the technology side of the operation. Was it anything special or was it just sort of static stuff?
No, I thought it looked pretty cool because they had just like different elements to it.
Okay.
Because
all we saw was just the video.
Yeah. So they did the video, but they had like some cool stuff on the ice, and then they did like an indigenous pattern on the ice that looked really cool as well.
Yeah. I saw that for the land acknowledgement.
Yeah, that was well done, I have to say.
And then I think I want to say I saw someone share an image of them doing was it the whale game or something like that?
The whale game?
It was Squid Game, like takeoff graphic. It was like whale game or something.
Okay.
Like that.
That might pass me by, to be honest, because
it would have been like an intermission type thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm
I
usually
presume
not there
you might have been grabbing
I'm either grabbing a beverage
libation or two
in the lineup for the washroom. Usually.
When they just need to invent the female version of the wall.
I don't even want to know what that is.
Well, actually, I don't think they have that at Rogers Arena, but I think we've talked about this, like Pacific Coliseum,
like
the men's washroom. It was, essentially what it was.
Grim.
It was a tiled wall and like a trough, and you just found a spot. And so there was never lineups at the men's washroom because you could fit so many people in at games. No one really cared.
Right.
In this day and age, that would not fly because of lots of reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty well practiced, so I actually didn't have that much of a lineup because I know where to go and I can walk pretty fast when I need to. But
I just, I can't speak from firsthand experience, but this has been a problem for as long as I remember, is that there's never enough like accommodation or space for a female fan within Rogers Arena, but any sporting experience. If there is a lineup, it's generally the longest and slowest simply because of logistics. I'll be honest.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
Right. Like there are some differences, but why not accommodate that? Like to me, it's the inequality of who you expect to actually show up to the event, which says a lot about.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny when I go home and I go to Arsenal games, literally you are in and out of the women's washroom so quickly and the men are queuing up, down the hall.
Based on
the demographics there.
And I get,
it's better than it used to be, but
figure this out.
Yeah.
Oh, anywho, crazy.
But yeah.
The other thing that happened, which is an exciting development, Hanek is back.
Yep. So
I say exciting development. It's
a development.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's added some excitement to Canucks Twitter.
yeah, so he's been in Abbey for the weekend. I think he played both games on the weekend. I've only seen like bits and pieces. I think he did okay. But I mean, Abbey are kind of playing some tough opposition. But yeah, back in Vancouver now. So Canucks are having a look, seeing where he's at.
Yeah, half-vaxxed.
Half-vaxxed.
It's interesting how there are. Okay, we've talked about this on the show. I am fully on board with the player, regardless of the circumstances, to be able to go and deal with whatever issues they personally need to deal with on by themselves. I have no right to know.
Mm-hmm.
But where I feel that the league, and in this particular case, the team, puts themselves in the position is that if you open that door up, you can't suddenly turn that around and tell me, shame on you for being curious. We know for a fact the league has tried to showcase vaccination rates to the extent where they actually announce the number of players who have not been vaccinated, and teams themselves announce the players, like I'll use, Tyler Bertuzzi in Detroit, who won't be traveling with the team because of,
right.
Like it's the league and the organizations that are making this public knowledge. Now, bring this to Vancouver. You might say, well, no, Chris. The Canucks have always said that Hamonic is dealing with some personal issues, and it's the team's supporting him, and they're going to provide him all the help that he needs. They're the ones who made this the issue.
Yeah, I mean, I did tweet today when Hamonic was first back, that if it really has nothing to do with his vaccination status, because in the maybe beginnings of his press conference, he did kind of say personal, family stuff. The Canucks have been really good, blah, blah, blah. And I said, yeah, they really screwed him if it really has nothing to do with vaccinations because of how badly they botched it. And then
Cue Travis Green,
honest Travis. We didn't know. We didn't know he was that honest. That he finally, let the cat out of the bag. He's half-vaxxed.
It's that's not media. That's not the fans. That's the team. And yes, okay, that's creating a storm, but so Patrick Johnson at Rising Action, PJ, you know him because he's a friend of the show, one of the friends of the show, because he has been around forever and helped host in an absence of Matt back in the day. He has actually been sort of talking about this issue and surfacing timelines saying, hey, based on this timeline, this is what I expect we might see. And then when that happens, oh, look, Hamonic arrives in Abbotsford. He's like, I just want to point out the math here is kind of adding up to what I said was possibly going to happen. And then, again, today after the news comes out that he's got his first dose, and he's not yet fully vaccinated, he starts doing something. People are on him, including other media, oh, no, just let this go. He is only doing what the team itself seems to be unable to do. And I don't feel PJ is trying to drive any particular narrative. He's simply surfacing everything facts. This is what the team said.
Yeah,
he's not digging.
Literally, they could have, even if they had just said at the beginning, Travis Hamonic isn't yet vaccinated. He will be, and he will join the team. I feel like that would have even been less of a news story than everything that's actually happened.
Well, and even then, I think they could have even taken the player's name out of context. Our expectation is players who will be playing for the team will be fully vaccinated this year.
Yeah.
And it's and if someone asks this, we have this expectation for all of our players.
Yeah.
I mean, if at that point someone leads into it and starts the team's got to be consistent. Benning did this himself. Let's be honest. In the off season and leading up to the preseason and in the preseason, Benning was all over the place. And then to your point where, yeah, you know what? Okay. He said what this is. Maybe this wasn't it after all. Travis so
yeah.
But, it is just, it's surreal. And I'm not I don't know the whole story. I'm not entitled to know the whole story. Ultimately, it's up to Hamannik if he wishes to share any of that. But it's just, yeah, I don't know. The Vancouver Canucks they do themselves a disservice, and again, it's almost comedic at this point. The tenure of this leadership group has just been all sorts of weird.
Speaking of comedic and, doing the maths, just on a lighter note to finish this, did you see that quote making the rounds today about an unnamed NHLer who said, about how players plan to have the babies in the off season?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, adult spending time together in November.
It happens.
It happens. I mean, Bo tried to do it like he planned the best he could with his kid.
Yeah.
Same with Geordie Ben, but
hey, I mean, you unfortunately can't control how modified seasons become.
Yeah.
All sorts of weird when the off season is suddenly the season and the season is the off season. So.
That did make me laugh.
One final thing I actually wanted to touch on a rewind, because we talked a little bit about Iota because a friend of the show, Nexus, had swung through and said he's on the Fire Travis Green bandwagon. There are a lot of fans that are suggesting that the Vancouver Canucks seem to be playing disinterested hockey, which is often a sign of the end for a coach. There are some in the media space saying very similar things. I am very apprehensive of the Vancouver Canucks exiting a coach, whether it be Travis Green or anyone at this point, because let's just say that's not the only party that if this thing needs to be changed, changes occur. I mean, it's a playoffs team, let's be honest.
Yeah. I think you're right that it doesn't put, quite apart from the fact that I don't think Travis is doing a terrible job, I do think some of his lineups in the last couple of weeks have lacked imagination, especially when it comes to power plays, and maybe his coaches aren't doing him any favors. But quite apart from that, I don't think you're putting a coach in a position to succeed if you're appointing him mid-season under Jim Benning's tenure with all these contracts still in place.
Well, if you're okay, if I'm a coach, I don't know if I want the gig.
I mean, there'll always be coaches to take these gigs, but I know what you mean.
But
I would
you would be coming in. You'd have to come in with the expectation that if things get this bad, and me as the coach can't turn it around. Unlike the ability to say I worked, I did as best as I could with what I had available to me. Mid-season, blah 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 blah. Like if the Vancouver Canucks don't do what we all want them to be doing, and this podcast is all about playoffs, baby, I can't envision this management group coming back for 2022-23.
Yeah.
And if it did, I at that point it's like, well, what do I know? I've been a fan. I've been following this team. I've been able to say, hey, point to it. Like I could see that happening. Like we're coming to the point where, and I'm genuinely wondering how close are we to the Jim Benning longest tenured Vancouver Canucks GM of all time?
I mean, the thing is, I think we're both, I don't know if shock's the right word, but maybe slightly surprised that we're still under the same management in this season. But another year and a year without playoffs and with fans in the stands creating unrest. I don't think it will happen. I think
if the Vancouver Canucks don't start turning around this homestand or things continue to go the way they are, Vancouver Canucks fans will quite vocally express displeasure. We're already seeing other teams, no longer have the honeymoon period of fans back in the stands. This is a good thing. They're getting lit up. So,
yeah.
Anywho, speaking of getting lit up, that'll be us too. We are going to take ourselves a short break. You're listening to the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com on the Full Press Coverage Network.
Take hitting out of the game. You can't hit anymore, so don't do it.
The unsportsmanlike conduct, I want to get an explanation on.
No kidding.
Because how do you get suspended for unsportsmanlike conduct?
Plus interference. There's no interference there. He had the puck.
Now, Madison never ever did that before. Now, why did he do it? Because he was mad.
Well, your early favorite for the Calder Trophy, that's for sure. Elias Pettersson, you might even say your early favorite for the Hart Trophy.
Just to get back to your question, Elias is going to play plenty. He didn't play. He's going to get a lot of power play time. And, yeah, I'm concerned about our offense. We lost 200-point players, and we've got to find a way to score.
As we get into half full, half empty, this is going to be a pretty empty segment of the show. I do want to share a little half full moment. You, our listeners, cannot see this right now, but there is a dance party going on behind me, and Baby Forrest is just bringing it.
Yeah, big time. It's making my heart a little fuller. That's for sure. But much needed moment of levity before we launch into this.
Yeah, she's. I think she's settled down because she knows we're talking about her. But because the head was bouncing over my shoulders, and oh, there it is. It's back. Dance party. And then I think she's trying to see herself as well on the screen. But no, let's talk a little bit about. Oh my goodness, how are we going to do this?
It's adorable, you guys. Let me just say that.
Okay, because I don't want to. I want to take this seriously. So just take a moment here.
We'll take a moment.
So the report came to light as to the Jenner and Block report about the accusation of a player in the Chicago Blackhawks organization being sexually assaulted back in 2010. And when the report came out, it was scathing. The Blackhawks organization, their entire management team, was identified as discounting the issue so significantly that legitimately the question was asked, can we somehow not deal with this? We're so close to the cup.
Mm-hmm.
In what world is something like that even a thing that one would think of comparative to assault, let alone sexual assault? I mean, it blows my mind that this would even be a topic of conversation.
The fact that there were so many discussions about this and the term disrupting team chemistry came up, like that's appalling.
Well, and moreover, that when they have this discussion, they decide they'll look into it, and by looking into it, they decided that it didn't happen.
Yep, that was like the initial retort, right?
Like it was like the Block and Jenner report essentially said they looked into it by essentially saying it didn't happen or it wasn't credible. Like it was just, it is scathing to consider that this had happened. And then that the organization, those involved, had the audacity to go for 10 years to continue to deny it. Equally appalling. And yes, people might point out, well, Joel Quenneville, he's no longer employed in the league, and Stan Bowman's gone, and what have you. I mean, really, the only one who was in the meeting where this originally got brought up just before the playoffs was Cheveldayoff. And somehow, surprisingly, as an assistant general manager, he lacked authority to do the right thing, and he gets to keep his job.
Yeah. And yet they're expecting a black ace whose career was under threat to stand up for himself. And then 10 years later, after all these failings have come out, that they don't have a better system. Their suggestion is anonymous tip line.
Well, okay. So I've seen some of the, putrid underbelly of what is NHL social media. There are people out there that legitimately are stuck in the dark ages and I think are indicative of everything that is wrong in society. But there are some that suggest that, he is a professional athlete and he could have dealt with it. That has absolutely no bearing on the issue whatsoever.
Yeah.
This is someone who actually was brave enough to bring it up, not only bring it up to those within the organization, he actually brought it up with the Players Association, which should be like, at the end of the day,
Yeah.
we hit on the Players Association when it becomes a player on player issue. Like when we talk about suspensions, they don't go and support the injured as well as they support the aggressor. But here's the situation: it is a player versus team.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nothing more than that. And the Players Association also like,
Yeah. And there's been failings at every single level of this, including and not limited to the media. I mean, would this have happened? Like, would even the investigation have happened if it wasn't for Rick Westhead? Probably not.
Oh, no. And I mean, I genuinely believe the hope is that because there's this belief of the news cycle, you just have to survive the first 15, 20 minutes and then the cycle moves on. Rick Westhead was one of the few individuals out there to continue to bring this up and identify information as it came to light, to ask the difficult questions. And I think if there was a defined experience that we can point to say, well, no. I mean, it would have been come to light. During the Gary Bettman press conference today, the NHL attempted to go to Darren Dreger from TSN twice before they went to the guy who is like, he is acknowledged by parties throughout the league, throughout media, throughout, like essentially Rick Westhead this is the guy that, I mean, he'll be quick to say others like Katie Strang and but
props to Katie as well.
The NHL is doing everything in their power not to go to him for a question. Yeah. And they go back to someone like Darren Dreger. He is one of the many who never discussed this.
Yeah. Let's be real. Rick Westhead is an investigative reporter. It's his job. And there aren't too many of those in the NHL. Like Katie Strang does some good work in that area. There's a few others, but it's not shocking that he did the bulk of the work. It's more the silence and the active silence of the rest of the media.
Well, and that's like, you know how easy it would be in a world of social media to actually acknowledge, I don't know enough about this. This is not an area that I have any expertise in. My colleague Rick Westhead does, and you need to read this column. You need to see this statement. You need to hear this. Like, you use those platforms you have access to help, raise those who are providing this important service and this important message. And again, for someone to say, well, how did it take 10 years? It's because the entire league and the culture around it has a problem. It is sick. I, as a fan, to be honest, I am part of that problem. I'd like to think that I have evolved and I am growing as a fan, but I'll admit this was never something I had even thought of. I might have even discounted had I had heard it.
Yeah.
Right? And yet today, and I mean, I'm sort of fast forwarding here, you have Gary Bettman saying, no, NHL culture is not a problem.
Yeah.
There's no problem with NHL culture. Dude, do you not even know your own product, your own league? I would discount, the amount of vitriol that should be directed towards him if you were to simply say, it's not as big of a problem as people might suggest it is, right? I mean, I would much rather him own the problem, but fine. You need to report to your bosses who are these owners. But to come out and say there's no cultural issue in the NHL, I'm so sorry, but you must be completely lying through your teeth. No, you are. And if you're not, you're so incompetent, you shouldn't even be in the job that you're in. Gary Bettman to me seems like a smart guy. He seems to me to be an intelligent man. So I'm not going to suggest in that particular case he's so incompetent he doesn't know. I'm just
but
at wit's end.
You see it over and over again. The culture of silence gets rewarded. I mean, the captain of the team, who was the captain at the time, said he didn't know. despite the fact there was like homophobic jokes made in the locker room and on the ice. And players from that team have come out publicly, even before the report was published, saying everyone knew. And yet they're still maintaining they didn't know. And they did nothing to protect their teammate. Like, just failures on so many levels, and continues to fail to this day.
Rick sat down with Kyle Beach. So, I mean, the report itself had provided enough detail that Kyle's identity as John Doe number 1 came to light.
Right.
There was enough dots to start connecting those lines. And ultimately, Kyle elected to come publicly out to say, this is me, and tell a story. But Rick had asked, like, what do you think about Brent Sopel? And I think it's Nick Boynton was the other one.
Mm-hmm, it was Nick Boynton.
He had listed some names, and where they said everyone knew, because there were some who were saying, like, well, why didn't Sopel speak up or do something about it? Why didn't Boynton? And Kyle's like, his response was, I am thankful for them because it validated my experience, and they too made it enough noise to ultimately lead to this even taking place. I'm not going to go and pass judgment when the aggrieved in the situation is telling me that he is thankful for them.
Yeah.
I mean, we all make, the term mistake gets used. We make mistakes. This is not a mistake by the league. This is not a mistake by the team, right? But the thing about this is, like, I can't change what I've done in the past, but I can own what I'm now going to do in the future.
That's the thing, right? It's appalling what happened and the way it was dealt with and the way it was covered up. Biff, what was happening right now is NHL was coming down hard on the Blackhawks, hard on everyone involved, and saying, we should have acted at the time. We didn't. We have failed these people. These are the safeguards we're putting in place.
And instead,
opposite of that.
Yeah, like there's this quote here that Bruce Arthur shared from the conference. This is Gary Bettman. We do have a policy. We don't tolerate it. This is actually in regards to a policy for sexual misconduct cases. We won't tolerate it, and we punish as appropriate. I know there are policies in other leagues where they specify what the penalty is, but that's something that they frequently don't adhere to. We think you judge this on a case-by-case basis. The reason you want to deal with it on a case-by-case basis is because you don't think there's cases.
Right.
And like, what is the NHL response to this particular issue and the report going public? Is sending out a memo to teams trying to proclaim their diversity and their inclusivity and the fact that it's a safe space. I'm sorry, that is a bunch of BS if I've ever read something. Like, the NHL is trying to say they don't have a problem. It is completely different, yet this is the same league that's suggesting they don't have a traumatic head injury issue.
Yeah.
And what have we seen the league go to extent to do? To discount that, to find every possible way to go and actually discount the qualifications of those who are injured. Well, this is court record.
Yeah. I mean,
to suggest it's somehow different here, oh, hell to the no. This is worse.
Even the bare minimum of human decency, I would say, when asked if he would publicly commit, if Gary Bettman would publicly commit NHL funds for therapy for the second victim, whose assault they are culpable in. And he said they'd have to look into it. Like, can you imagine the heartlessness it takes to say that?
It's here, it would be silly to think about. Here's a quick win. You know what? Here's what we as a league are now going to do. We don't have to, but we're a good league. Right? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. Like, there's a part of me that wonders, is that the lawyer in Gary?
Yeah, maybe.
Like, he was asked today if he had reached out to Sheldon Kennedy, and his response was that was an issue that wasn't related to the NHL.
Yeah.
Like
It's so callous.
I feel it is it like, and I'm disparaging lawyers when I say this, and I don't mean to. I just do not know how to phrase it in any other way. It is this perception that there are some that believe that sometimes lawyers get stuck in the legal world.
Yeah.
Just like some of us who are not lawyers think we know the legal
Right.
world and then apply legal systems to life.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, it doesn't make it any better. It actually, I think, kind of makes it worse.
Yeah.
And, you know, for those that suggest, well, Gary's got to lose his job here. How would that happen?
Yeah.
His bosses are NHL owners. I'm positive the last thing the NHL owners want to do is replace Gary with someone else for fear that it gives opportunity to whomever this new face happens to be to open up Pandora's box and look at all of them.
Yeah. There are a lot of issues, and NHL just keeps sweeping them under the carpet. That's how they thrive.
Yeah, I just, you know, I mean, yes, Quenneville's out of a job now, but the fact he was able to coach a game.
Yeah, that they didn't think that, despite the fact that he had endangered people under his charge.
Well, you know how many times where someone in a place of employment, if they're under investigation, are placed on some form of administrative leave? Why is the NHL no different? Like, that's not just, it's simply we're doing the safe thing
and
pay them, sit them out.
NHL isn't different. If you're suspended in the NHL pending a hearing, you're suspended. You don't play.
Yeah, but see, it's different circumstances, right? Because you know, it's only worth a $2 million fine. I mean, if you screw the cap in it all, we're going to take the screws to you. But if you allow a young player under your house get sexually assaulted and don't do anything about it for 10 years and lie through your teeth about it, and then simply say you're sorry because it was a mistake, $2 million. Like, I'm sorry. Yeah. I commented to a friend earlier this past week. The NHL is making it hard for me to care about the league.
Yeah, I get it.
As much as the Canucks make it hard sometimes for me to remain a fan, and I know there are probably some out there like, well, good riddance, you're not a real fan. First and foremost, gatekeeping ain't cool. I can do whatever the hell I want. And I might be in the minority, but if I'm in the minority, it's a very sad state of affairs. And if I'm in a majority, then that's a scary thing. And I don't know where I am. I just know how I feel.
Yeah.
But I am finding more and more people are vocalizing how they feel, whether it be about the league, about the team. You know, the more of us that take our interests elsewhere, and there's a lot to be interested in this day and age.
Yeah, I will say for many of the reasons I mentioned off the top, I'm struggling with sport right now.
Yeah.
Sport doesn't love you back.
Yeah. It's just, I truly wish that change would happen. I think there are many opportunities and you know, being on the outside, I'll never understand why decisions are made the way they are. But like, how is this even okay? How is it that we as fans tolerate this? How is it that someone like Rick Westhead has to continue to hammer on doors and chase this for as long as he did, only to allow for the league finally to go and again compel a team to go and investigate itself, and then to have the team simply say, oh yeah, we done bad. Have the owner say, yeah, we done bad. Oh, by the way, we're going to go in and still challenge the lawsuit. We done bad, but we haven't done that bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it is sad. The problem is that anyone who might think this is an isolated incident, it's not. I don't know how many times something like this has occurred, But the fact it happened once is too many, and we know in this particular instance, this guy was able to do it twice that we know of.
Mm-hmm.
He's a sex offender. He has been convicted. And, those are not isolated incidents.
No.
And then how many others within the league have been in these positions? I mean, we've had guests on our show that have described some of these instances that are like, oh, it's locker room behavior. That doesn't make it right. And I just, the fact that if you speak up, that goes against the team philosophy. It might cost you a cup. And oh my God, that's all we're here for.
I mean, the fact that Bill Guerin, who is currently he was the assistant GM for the US Olympic team, and in line to replace Stan Bowman, he's currently under investigation for covering up a different sexual assault.
Yeah, but there's no issue, Anna. The league doesn't have a culture problem. This is a case-by-case basis, very isolated incidents.
Yeah.
There have been... I've been a fan of the Vancouver Canucks since the 80s. There have been stories here in Vancouver.
Right.
And, growing up, they were stories, they were rumors.
Right.
And maybe that's all they were. But I'm sorry, now knowing what has happened in the league today, knowing how the league once was and the culture that has existed in this league for as long as it has, I look back and genuinely believe if we were to go in and pull back the blinds here in Vancouver, we'll see a lot of things that we would not like about our own team.
Yeah. There are no clean hands here.
No. And that's, the reality is this, it's a sad state of affairs. Oh, man.
Yeah. It's been
I don't know where to go from here.
No, I don't think there's a way to exit this necessarily. There's a problem.
No.
There's a very big problem in the NHL.
No.
And it needs changing.
The problem is it won't change. It won't change with the leadership. We didn't even touch on the fact that the Players Association is part of the problem. Don Fair might be out of a job. He's been meeting with teams, and based on what player or union reps are saying, they have some concern. But then for every person that comes out and says that, you've got a Taze who's like, well, I didn't know anything that was going on. I mean, these were good guys. They're good people. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, talk about not being able to read the room.
So as we go and wrap up things up, let us know what your thoughts are. The easiest way to do so is jump in to C4 Discord, discord.io/C4 podcast. But you can also reach out to us on Twitter at the C4 podcast.
Even on
my
Facebook.
hope is that...
Yep.
Oh yeah,
we've had a few
Facebook.com/C4
messages on that.
podcast.
If you'd rather do something privately, please feel free to do that.
But my hope is that our listeners sort of understand where we're coming from and are agreeing with us. If you're not, while I'm genuinely curious as to why that would be the case, I'm going to tell you straight up, you're not going to convince me to come around to your side. I'm more curious how you could even at this point in time suggest that there isn't an issue. Like it's no different than people saying, oh, in our society, you are innocent until proven guilty. Yes, in the court of law, and the state has a very huge burden to prove, but in the scales of what is moral in life.
Yeah. I would say if you're of that opinion, take this as an opportunity to do some reading, do some research, and just learn a lot more.
Yeah. So on behalf of Anna, A4603, myself, Chris at Lightforce, we out.